I've got Darren back with me. Darren Deojee.
Hello.
D-O-G dog. Deojee. You said
That's
that
the
last
way to
time.
pronounce it. You know, so many people asked me years ago if I made that up because it's phonetically exact on the letters. It's like, of course I didn't make it up. If I was going to make up a name, I wouldn't make that one up.
But it's very, very unusual, isn't it?
It is, it is. Well, my dad's from Mauritius, and so yeah, there's not many of us around.
So as Darren said, when I just mentioned I haven't got an introduction ready, but obviously we talked about well, it was 3 weeks ago today. And so that's still on the page and it's on my website. So you'll find that video in past talks on the website, jackie-white.co.uk. So there's the introduction to Darren there. But literally, we had 8 things that we were going to go through and we got through 3 of them.
Yeah.
It was just so interesting, everything. Um, and I will start with that because I've just said to Darren, have you heard that something big's going to happen in September? Like everybody seems to be talking about there's going to be a major event in September. And so do you want to give the response that you've just give to me, Darren? Because I said you're calling it in. But even me talking about that is not a really great thing, but I'm hearing it so often. So yeah, can you speak to that a minute?
Well, it's last time we spoke a little bit about past tense and future tense, didn't we? And this is about future tense. It's future tension. And it's kind of there is the component of how we may be co-manifesting it in some way, but what I think is more important or more impactful is that we live as if that conclusion is real and true from now until then. And the load of that is huge. I mean, I mentioned the example of Y2K for those who are old enough to remember Y2K. Everyone thought everything was going to end because the computers wouldn't know to tick over into a new millennium. And but the upheaval, the lived distress in all these IT technicians and all these businesses that were dependent on their computer systems, people were living as if it was going to happen and feeling those fears as if it was, and then it never came to pass. It all came to nothing. Um, and so one has to, I mean, for me, when we talk about what the point of spelling is, in terms of mastering it, is to be able to master our state of well-being and purpose and focus. And if we can be swayed by an idea of a potential occurrence that might happen and it knocks us out of our state, knocks us off our purpose, then that's the spell's had its effect no matter what degree we've gone to, you know. I mean, and then to me, that's where the real sort of magical effect is of words is how we form interpretations and then live in the feeling of it, you know, as if it were true. The stories we make up about other people's behavior and what it might mean about us or something like that, and then we live as if it was true. And it's the same with this. We get a few pieces of data, we make a snapshot and an image. In some cases, it's a true illusion, and we live in it as if it's real. And it's like, whoa, that's big because it's our life. The time is our life. We don't get it back. And if you're sitting there spending weeks or months or years feeling this thing about a story or some future thing, then what is unlived now? I mean, I have to work on this in myself, you know, and if I look at it honestly in myself and I look at the cost to myself or the suffering, the low states, the either the helplessness or the hopelessness or the half-heartedness or the give up, all those different things that have all happened because I've formed an interpretation and then lived in the story of it, you know, without there being any sort of direct action in a lot of the cases. It's actually just believing a story and then living in what I've decided I feel about it. It's an enormous consequence. That is spelling right there, you know, is how we can live that out and change how we think about ourselves, treat ourselves, think about each other, treat each other, the world itself, all the big questions. It's enormous how much of a sort of jungle of unconscious conclusions that we're living in that are limiting us and making us vulnerable to people chucking stories at us.
So living in the now moment as much as possible. I think we
It's
said that
helpful.
last time.
Well, it's helpful. Well, here's a way to look at it, really, and that is if you were applying 100% of yourself to now, then surely the future is the best that it could possibly be because you've given it 100%. But if you're scattered 50% in the 40% in the past, 20% in the distance, 20% in the future, how much is here now to make that best future for you? Now, as a reasoning human being, I'm not saying that we all drop into some kind of mindless now state where we have no sense of process and progress and direction and objective and things like that. But it's about what's the balance? How much is an appropriate amount to spend future, past, distance, and how much now, especially if you want to achieve intensity and intention, which means you need to have a mastery of your attention. I think we spoke about that last time.
We
Yeah,
did, honestly, but it's so worth mentioning again because I think it's still very
yeah,
prominent at the minute. So it's
it's
a really
huge.
good thing. And also, like I had an event last week with Alice, and she talked about the breath, and being aware of your breath as well can really
Mhm.
bring you back to the present moment. But
Absolutely.
yes, yeah,
Absolutely. Breathing is one of the most important things to help bring us back to the now. It
yes.
really is. And it's so slow, the rational mind can often really feel aversion to sort of getting into measured breath.
Being conscious of it. So the other morning, I'll just say my dog Monty got this ball that he absolutely loves. It was here earlier, but it's not here now. Anyway, but a really colourful ball. And when Joe come back with the dogs, he didn't have the ball. And so I went out into this new dog park that we've got near us. It was like seven, about 10 past 7 in the morning, and I just sat on the. I found the ball pretty quickly, and I just sat for 10 minutes, not props, not 10 minutes, but it was just a gentle breeze at that time of the morning, nobody about. It was divine, really, yeah, really beautiful just to sit there and be with myself, but with my breath, thinking about the breath as well.
Yes, yes.
So
Oh,
I'll just
good
mention
medicine. Good medicine,
last
that.
time we this is as far as we got last time. We were talking about compliments and curses and what that does to the body,
Mm,
signposts, attention and collapsing of everything else, shared mental space.
yeah.
And so you showed an example of a pen, and that's where your attention is if you've got a pen.
Mm.
But if you look back at the other one, you'll see what that's about. Um, Different ways we're fooled, context, collar and cuffs. That's very interesting in the last one, um, where we're told to wear collar and cuffs for men.
And
Um,
in trance, we covered in trance as well, didn't we? People say,
Entrance and
yeah,
contract,
yeah.
changing meanings over time. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was as far as we got. And then we've got greater or lesser implications. So I have got this saying quite often, that I just say, oh, bless you. If someone's done something nice, I say, oh, bless you. And then this girl come up to me at one of the events and she said, did you know that saying bless you is you're actually saying they're less than you, be less than you? What do you say to that, Darren?
So when I say greater or lesser implication, this is really getting into the sort of science and the art of spelling, which is it's not just about, say, looking at the letters in a word. It is a combination of what it currently means, how people use it, how we say it, and what the letters in the word are. And so because of that, you get a sort of greater and lesser implication of things, as in how implied is it really in how we say what we say. So like collar and cuffs is very clear implication,
Mm-hmm.
um, very strong implication there. And in trance is an easy one to see as well. But when we get to things like there's be less, we don't say be less. We
Exactly.
say bless.
Yes.
And they are then not the same. There could be a word be less because we have the word believe, we have the word before, we have the word benign, but we
Mm-hmm.
don't say be less, we say bless. And it's really important to look at how we say the words because some of the mistakes are in how we say it, like in entrance, entrance, and
Mhm.
others are in how it's written. And that's where you get letters changed that can change the meaning of a word. But in all honesty, there's only a few that have gone to that level of distortion because actually that part of mind is has been unconscious to most people, including social engineers. It's something that we're only now just coming into even having the capacity to kind of grasp consciously the sort of alchemical effect of these squiggles and sigils, which is what the characters of the alphabet are, how they can have an effect on us, how they can have an effect in a way that other squiggles and symbols don't, and how that can then lead to everything from whole new ideas to crushing ideas to ones that then affect how we feel and then behave from
Mhm.
squiggles that that's really something, really something.
I mean, if I said, "Oh, bless you," if someone says something nice, I say, "Oh, bless you, thank you." I'm not saying that in any
No, you're
way.
not. You're
No.
not at all.
And it's like
Yeah,
good morning. We all started to say grand rising instead of good
I know.
morning because it meant
I know
going
some
into
friends.
morning.
Well, here's the thing though. Again, this is one that's so there are a lot of words that have become simplified over the years. But what we tend to do is we simplify the saying, not the spelling. So there's loads of words in English like that, like um Worcester sauce or something like that. I'm trying to think, or like, town names where they don't say anything like how it's written. Now that's an example where you would change it that way, but it's not common that the letters themselves get changed. What happens is we swap how we say them. So, for example, the word wand is we say it as if it's an O, but that word says wand.
Yeah.
It says wand. That's what it says. But why do we say wand as if it was the letter O when it's the letter A? So when we change a spell, we tend to change the sound, not the spelling. And that's where some of our disconnection from what is real is kicked in, is we're not actually even speaking our own language. Now, when it comes to mourning, so those who are into etymology will know that it comes from the Germanic root and it's morn, morgan, all this sort of stuff. And that's one of the implications when we're looking at greater or lesser implication in a spell is etymology is part of it, but it's only a small part of it. A big part of it is current usage. But the word mourning, as in to grieve, is one that we don't say correctly anymore because of lazy speech, people not knowing how to truly pronounce two vowels next to each other. And this is where we get a lot of transposed vowels, like in wand and wand. It's like there's a lot of vowel swaps that we do in our language without even thinking about it. I was trying to think of some other examples there, but I don't want to lose my thread. Um, so when we look at the word for grieving, that is mourning, which to say it properly is more like mourning or mourning. You would actually have much more older English sound to it, where we would say a much more diphthong-like sound in response to it. And we've just become lazy. And we've had people who don't know how to speak or read the language properly just truncate it and say, oh, well, that's morning as well. It's not morning. There's a whole bunch of things like that that we don't say it properly. And that's what's creating this easy confusion between morning and morning because we say them the same, even though they're not spelt the same. But the fact they're not spelt the same tells us they are different words,
So,
which is different. There's another example of that, or the other side of that is, you can have words like contract, where you can say contract and contract, or you can say conduct, which would be conduct or conduct, conduct as in music or conduct as in electricity. They're this exact same word that we say differently with different meanings. Whereas with mourning, so it should much be more of like an oo, almost like with an oo sound in there. A mourning is grief. Morning is the beginning of the day. Subtle differences in there, but this fact of us losing these details are why people are lost in the mind, and so easily goadable into different things because actually the language is in a total mess.
the thing is, English is very, very difficult. Even the word boat, you wouldn't know there's an A
Yes.
in
No.
boat.
Nope. Well, people don't even say the language properly. They call it English as if it began with an I. That says English. The language is English, and people don't even say it right. I mean, there's no rule in English, not one. It is not possible with any known rule of English to be able to say the word one properly by looking at it.
Yes.
Not
Yes,
possible.
absolutely.
And this is because our language is totally disembodied from reality, which is why it's full of illusions and full of mispointings. And then people are having these huge flares of emotional reaction to these illusions and delusions and distractions and all the rest of it because the language itself isn't plugged in. So it's like they're not really getting that real embodied biofeedback that can take them to deep meaning, real meaning, lasting meaning. And instead, it's all these superficial meanings that create these little flares of excitement and sort of, the sense of hope and possibility down a particular rabbit hole. But it's all just, like artificial flares of emotion being triggered in you by somebody painting a pretty spelling picture.
Incredible. It really is. For children learning the English language, I mean, it is the most difficult, and yet most countries
Yeah.
will try and learn the English
Yes.
because most people understand the English.
Well, there's a reason for that, but I don't know if we want to get into that. But
No.
there is a reason for it. We won't go there for now. We can save that, but there's a reason why that is and why English has become the universal language. We won't go into why it is, but you're right. It's like English is said around 15 to 20% how it is written. The other 80%, you have to be told how to say it, like the word garage. You wouldn't know, garage, jarage. It's like the rules are not clear on accent inflections in English. We don't use accents like other languages do to tell you when it's an a or an a or a long sound or a short sound. You're just expected to know these things. And this is why it is rife it's an area that's both rife for misdirection, but also rife for innovation and newness. It's a very alive language compared to some other languages, which even though there are speakers, they're dead languages because people can't come up with new ideas in their own language. Often you'll find now ideas tend to come in a lot of the times in English that then get translated to other languages. But anyway, living languages and dead languages is a big issue. Don't want to go down that route, but there are reasons why English is what it is, why it's not spoken as it's written, and that's really because we haven't been taught how to say it properly. There's a lot of sounds in our language that people don't say properly at all.
Mhm. Yes, I totally agree. I mean, like, I quite often drop a H. But anyway, um,
Yeah,
yeah,
but that's one good example. It's a good example, and all you need is
yes,
that happening over a few generations, and H disappears.
because I often say, "Oh, I'm going home," instead of home.
Yes, but that's regional dialect. That's okay. That's got a place. Local dialect has always been and it will always be. There'll always be these variations in different regions. The language itself remains as a foundation. Proper English and you know how you speak. We know the difference, even though we don't. In some languages, they have formalized formal and informal speech, but in a way we haven't formalized it in that way. We kind of have the idea of it, the Queen's English perhaps might be how people have the idea of formal speech, but we don't have it as clearly as certain other cultures do.
I was asked the question about other languages. Do they have spells within their words, or is it
Yeah, they
just an
do.
English thing?
No, 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 they
Oh,
do. They have their own, but in a way. So what we're really doing I mean, what's the point in getting to know spelling? What's the point in it? And
yes.
it's to be able to hack our own unconscious conscious. So the point is, we formed conclusions and interpretations. We learned how to speak and how to draw meaning. We weren't born with those abilities; they were learned. And so a lot of the things that we live by, in terms of conclusions about ourselves and stuff and the world, they were made consciously, but we've become unconscious of them. And so to me, the point is to hack through into what is unconscious and may not be serving us anymore, so it can become conscious, and then we can make changes if we need to, and set ourselves free from where we may have been mispointed or misdirected by others, but found ourselves living in a story of their authority and power, or living in, a story of a dead end world and a dead end life, when in actual fact that the opposite is true. But it's about developing the capacity to do that, to get there in ourselves. I mean, to me, it's really about helping the mind become aware of itself.
Mm.
And then once the mind, because for most of us, we're not aware that the mind can become conscious of itself. And that's really something. And when it starts to become conscious of itself and its own mechanics, then you can start to see the limited structures that we've made for ourselves. You can really start to see them in a new way, and then start to go up breaking through them. And in a way, it's no different. We spoke before about, Richard, I was mentioning again the fact that when we picked up our physical bodies, it was kind of not skillful. We were clawing our mum when we wanted to caress her, and it took us a long time to become skillful with it so that it would do what we wanted it to do. So my hand would pick up the cup and not knock it over, things like that. But I had so much good example of how to pick up a cup. Everybody was doing it. Now, when we skip forward to emotions and the mind, they're kind of no different as an energy moving through us. And that is the spasm in the way the physical body did. So our emotions at puberty are no different really to the infant limbs just going, and it's kind of like, oh, self-consciousness, arousal, attraction, rejection, but they're all unfettered waves. And and we don't get, or we never used to, it's improving now, we don't get such good guidance or example into how to turn those flares of self-consciousness and rejection and arousal into skillful moves. But it is no different. It can go from that spasming to a skillful move. And so for many of us, because we don't see the way to that and we don't see the example, we shut down or we shut it away or have other coping strategies, but they always bubble out either against us or against other people. They don't go anywhere, they're still here. And it's the mind is no different. And it's even so most people now have a level of emotional intelligence and emotional consciousness. That's something that's really grown in the last century. But this is a sort of mental self-consciousness that's kind of new to us. It's like, it's like that baby, baby when it first finds its hands, so for months the arms are waving about, and then one day a baby finds its hands, and what that means is it realizes that this thing that's been flapping about is our own, and it's ours, and oh, we can do something with it. Oh, look at what it does. And in a way, that's what this work is really about. It's like the baby of the mind trying to find its hands, which are, what are these words doing? How is it working? How is it influencing how I feel? And there's a hack right into that in the new course I've done. I go into it in quite a lot of detail because there are numerous steps there that we can get into and make changes. And that's phenomenal. That's true. That's a path to true mental freedom.
Honestly, you said, didn't you, that you've been doing for the last 3 weeks, you've really got into getting this course ready and
I
you've
have, and
really
so it's all
enjoyed it.
fresh in me. I have, yeah, this course I've just ready for release, really, and I'm quite excited about it. But a lot of these notions are very, I mean, there's a lot in it,
Brilliant.
way more than we're brushing the surface of now. But to me, that's the point of it, is actually getting us to a place of greater self-mastery where what we say and how we feel is well represented in our conduct and our speech, rather than the sort of frustrated life that is the alternative, and the regrets and the wish I did it otherwise sort of thing. And this is a pathway to becoming more skillful with the mind. Just like you can go and do practices and learn things that will get you more skillful with your body, this is a way to become more agile and skillful with the mind, and playing around with words at first and feeling what happens when we move and shift the meaning. That's just the stirring of the baby's hand in a way. It goes much, much further in terms of the level of awareness we can have of what's going on in that space and what we're doing to ourselves
Honestly, one
and
thing I
each other.
really love about what Darren does, he runs men's groups. And I would think that is absolutely amazing for men to join you with what you do, for men to gather
Well,
together. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, we do a few sequential rites of passage now, and that's really getting into ancestral healing, getting into healing male shame and the kind of the brotherhood and trust wounds between men. And we do it in a quite an effective rite of passage. Now we had a few hundred men go through that, and we've got some great testimonials and stuff. It's wonderful. But what I'm really excited about, I mean, really excited, because for years I've had women been asking me, and I'm finally in talks with somebody, fingers crossed that she's going to go through with it. But I've finally found somebody who I think would be ideal to run the women's events with, because I've been wanting for a few years to do women's events and on sort of like, the sisterhood wound between women, the ancestral connection for women, as well as because I go quite deep into masculinity and the hacking of gender when I do the guy stuff. We haven't spoken about that at all, but I've got a whole body of work on gender that I've been doing for 20 plus years now. And um I've not, it's not never felt right to run them for women.
Mhm.
But as a man, it's just not felt right. And so I've been looking for years for a female to run it with, and I might have found somebody, and I'm very excited if she's willing to go through with it, because I think we could. I think it would be an amazing session, and I'm hoping she's going to go through with it. And I'll have dates by early next year, really.
My gosh, well, I'll be interested to know
I'm
about that, Darren,
excited.
100%. Oh my goodness. So, emotions are not connected to the world, but to the spells in our head. So, I think you've really,
Oh, I covered that before last time, didn't I?
yeah,
Did we do
yeah,
that last time? Yeah.
yeah, because then it says attention and intention, which is the tensions. So then
Yeah.
we went on to the advanced spelling bit. Spelling
Mm,
is about the mind becoming aware of itself. So you've said that
I've
difference
said that.
between, yeah, difference between expression, presentation, and communication. Real spelling and communication is enabling conception.
Oh, okay. We've not spoken about that yet, have we?
No.
Okay. So this follows on from us just talking about men's work and women's work, um, because people don't realize that communication and spelling really is an expression of gender. And it's worth saying now. So lots of people have gender wounds physically and emotionally and sensually, and in their own gender, the balance between the masculine and feminine within. And it means that all that murkiness and kind of unresolved stuff means that we don't really get to see what gender becomes at higher levels and at lesser densities, like thinking. And gender is present in thinking as well. And this is why we talk about conceiving an idea. The language to a concept is from conception. To conceive is the product of gender. It's a product of, transmission and reception in some way or another. And really, gender is a lot about transmission and reception, regardless of whether it's a man or a woman when we're talking about communication. So in a way, there's a big difference between expression, presentation, and communication, because really we're always trying to help. We want somebody else to conceive. That's them. We want them to understand, you know, us, whatever it is. We want them to understand. Of course we do. And there's kind of three ways we go about it: expression, presentation, communication. Expression is has got a lot of traction recently. People like to express themselves,
Mhm.
but expression doesn't take into account the other person at all, really. It's just about you getting something off your chest. I've just got to express myself. I've just got to. And that really doesn't take into account the other person. If they're ready for your expression right now, if they want your expression right now. So, in terms of transmission reception, you've got somebody who wants to transmit, and you're not really sure if you've got somebody that wants to receive. but but expression is what it is, and a person can get great relief from that, but you're not always going to get connection, and you're not always going to get conception. You're not always going to, the other person isn't always going to conceive what you're on about. It depends on how you express yourself. And the thing about expression is that there's a large tolerance for unskillfulness in there. If somebody's expressing themselves, we don't always expect them to be doing their best, and often it can come out a bit messy. So it has a place, but it's not the best form of communication. And then we have presentation, and presentation exactly what it says. It's where we present the same thing, regardless of the audience. So expression tends to be more in the now and contextual, whereas presentation is, this is my PowerPoint, and you're going to get it regardless. People who have spiels that they have in their head about different, say, you know, situations in the world or whatever, they may have a little set presentation in their mind that they go into when they're sharing it with somebody. But much like expression, it doesn't really take into account the other person. It's like you're getting it whether you like it or not. Blah, 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 blah. Did you know the government of this? did you know this? And again, you might not actually get reception. You might not get conception. You might not actually achieve the goal. And it can be frustrating. You might feel a bit better because you presented yourself, but was that the goal? Was it just to hear the sound of your own voice? Was it just to let off steam? Was that the goal? Or did you really want to connect with this other person? And this is where we get to communication. And communication is about communing, you know. Communication is taking the other person into account.
Mm-hmm.
And that's completely different from the other two. It's so different. It's unbelievable. All right, there might be an element of taking the other person into account with a presentation or with an expression. You know, there's going to be variables there. But when it comes to communication, it's all about, well, where are you at? And how can I, and I know where I'm at, but where are you at? And where and how can we meet? In terms of that. And this is people, and it is a gender subject. It's like there's a section in the course and a talk I did for years on the sex of communication, because it is gender where so in Toltec gender, they've got when they're looking at the differences between the male and the female, when it comes to the communication point, it's quite simple. And it's like, well, if you put two human babies next to each other and one's a male and one's a female, what's the difference? Arms and legs, yeah, eyes, ears, yeah, yeah, nipples, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, this one's got something pointing out. This one doesn't. It's that simple. And really, in language, when we're speaking and communicating, whoever is making a point or whoever has a point to make is in the transmitting role. They're the one who's in the male role. And if you want to get somebody's point, you have to be open to receive it. And if you're not open to receive it, there's no guarantee you want it or will get it anyway. And this is where we get to the whole sex of it, because if we said, if people walk up and they just make a point to somebody, they do their little presentation or whatever, and it's like, well, if you were chatting somebody up for having, to seek intimate relations with them, is that what you would do? You just walk up and stick your point in their face? That wouldn't really be welcome, would it? No. What do you do? Well, even if you know you've got a point you want to make, which, and often both parties know that, but they engage in the game beforehand. And in that game, what's actually happening is, so let's use the example of a guy chatting a female up. It's like, well, what is he actually trying to do at first? Well, at first, he's just trying to get her attention, trying to actually arouse attention.
Mm-hmm.
So arouse attention. Oh, have we got, have, can we have a conversation here? Is it possible to have a conversation here to get a little bit of connection? That's long before there's any point making going on. And then what the process that follows now before actual point making is a process of alignment. You come into alignment, you get a sense of where she's at, where you're at. You come into this process of aligning and adjusting. And then, in the sexual act, obviously, if it proceeded, then you get to the point of, actual intimacy. And what you find in that process is just more alignment, more adjustment, so that the seed that is going to get planted can be well aligned and planted well. And in that process, there might be closeness and hard point making, and there might be distance and pause. And actually, it's only good if there's closeness and distance. It's not good if it's all close or all distant. And so really there's a rhythm to making a good point and getting somebody else to conceive, which is see where they're at with a particular aspect of the point, and then withdraw and see where they're at. Are they with you? Have they got with you this far? Are they still interested? Because all the time, you've got to make sure they're still interested. Otherwise, your point is wasted. It's wasted. It's for your own gratification. And I
Mhm.
actually call it, it's like mental masturbation. If you just want to make your point and get off, you might, it's just mental masturbation. All you're interested in is getting your load off. You're not really interested in making sure that they, pardon the crassness, but I use the crassness of sexuality because that's the energetic dynamic that's taking place. And because we have wounds in the other areas, we're not aware of this beautiful flow that takes place mentally that's the same. It's the same. We do it physically. We come into alignment and face somebody before we speak to them. We do it emotionally. We make sure we come into alignment emotionally with somebody. And this is about what it is to come into alignment mentally with somebody before we go hitting them with our hardest points, which is, and then people wonder why they're not effective. They wonder why they've not been able to move somebody or stir them. Well, let's look at the sexual example again of what happens if I just walk up and hit you with my points, whether you like it or not. We call that rape,
Oh
or
yeah.
if it's rape, and it's like, that's what people do with their ideas, just walk up and just bam, 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 bam. Just like, what? And you wanted me on your side.
Hmm.
People wonder how they've managed to damage so many of their relationships with their fervor over these topics. And it's like, I I'm compassionate to your fervor and your sense of desperation and your yearning for this other person to see how important this is. But this
Hmm.
is not the way to be effective at it. You're just expressing yourself, you're just presenting. Communication, you're going to meet them somewhere in the middle and you might actually get them to receive your point. But it's all about how you come into alignment and how you meet in the middle. Other examples are if the point is not well planted, if you don't plant the idea well, then you can end up with miscarriages and abortions, which are, either the idea doesn't take hold and doesn't grow, or the person rejects it later because there was some bit missing or something like that. So the correlations of sexuality and idea are it's a perfect correlation. So I'm not making the model up because it's saucy. It's the pattern that's revealed itself through watching what happens in effective and non-effective communication matches what happens in the alignment of sexuality. And it's just saying, oh, this is a fractal. This is a fractal. Here's the same fractal physically. Here it is emotion. And oh, look, here it is mentally as well. And by just playing around with that. And anybody watching this now can go and, notice where you've maybe gone in too hard with your points. And then if you reflect on it, you might actually say, oh, I can see I didn't even have their attention.
Hmm.
Oh, I can see that I lost them halfway, but I didn't go back and realign with them. I could see when they switched off, but I just kept going because didn't know what else to do. Whereas this is about saying, no, there's something you can do here. This is a process you can get engaged in. But just like making sexual advances, it can be a frustrating process at first because, especially like kids are a good example, because it's no different sharing ideas with kids. Getting aligned with kids to get them to get your point takes much repetition and much alignment, and it's okay. But if you get, form absolute conclusions that like you didn't get it, da, 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 you get all hard and upset, you cut a person off, or you're less present with them in the future, sort of thing, um, then you've given up, not realizing, wait a minute, all you can do is you can just change your angle of approach.
Hmm.
Maybe get a sense of where they're at a little bit before. That it's like if you had a love interest, you might get to know them a little bit first before you try to make the points. So get to know if you're really interested in that person, understanding your point, understand where they are first a little bit, so you understand where you might have to reach to make your point. And this is
Hmm.
that aspect of communication that takes the other person into account. And it's transformational in being heard and understood and feeling the connection, the relief of being heard and understood. It's actually immensely relieving. Whereas to say your piece and still not be understood and felt is really frustrating and upsetting. And it's like, yeah, you might have said the right words or the words that you meant to say, but you maybe didn't do it in the right way, which is why they didn't receive it from you. And now there you are living in the aftermath of that, thinking you couldn't get through and they just don't get it. And now you've given up and you're going to do something else rather than realizing, my mental dexterity and agility was a bit spasmic and a bit unconscious. With this sort of awareness and knowledge of spelling and mind and how it works, we can then say, I can revisit that. I can, first of all, set myself free from this prison of a reaction I've created for myself and taking it personally that they didn't get my point, you know, and instead go, hey, okay, well, I really like this person. I'm really interested in this person. I really would like them to know they're a valuable person to me. Obviously, they have to hit that marker first. They have to be worth it, you know. And but if they're worth it, then you come in and approach it from a different angle, and then another angle, and another angle. Depends on how important the person is to you and how important it is to convey this point, how much of a need there is. But you know, the possibilities are endless and infinite, and it is so like, you know, young men crafting dates for young ladies, you know, where it's like coming up with all these different ways to approach spending time to try to get close to make their point. In a way, it's like that, but for your ideas and for the things that are important to you. And of course, it doesn't matter if we're talking about tables and chairs and, you know, do you want a chicken dinner or vegetarian? It's really about the things that are important and meaningful to you, the things that you're passionate about. It's about and being able to share them with people who are important to you.
So there was so
Not
much
on about
going,
there.
there's so
Yeah.
much going through my mind where you were saying all that. So I went on a course.
I was speaking to quite a lot of spaces there. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, it's a big thing for men, for young lads, even to get to that point where they, because
Oh,
they'll have a lot of things going on in their mind, even to approach a girl.
they don't now. It doesn't happen as much.
No,
No, no, no.
because
It's a shame.
they'll be thinking what the reaction will be or whatever. Get
There's a jungle in here that is staying their hand and
mm,
stilling their tongue. You know,
mm.
it's an absolute jungle that's been socially imposed, personally imposed, culturally imposed. It's an enormous issue. And girls as well to a different degree. You know, the anxiety in girls now is off the charts and the amount who are on mental health meds is a tragic situation, you know, truly tragic. And again, same
Waited.
here.
Yeah, I was waiting for my husband the other day because he was having acupressure, and so I was parked outside of a beauty salon, and the amount of girls that were going in, like it was obviously suntan or hair, it was some that they were doing something, and I thought, gosh, what girls do to for these men, and then when you see the men, you think, do they take the same effort over themselves? But anyway, yeah, that was
Well, this
wonderful.
is a gender issue. This is an interesting one where this is about you know, the attention to the form.
Mm,
And the feminine is just naturally more attentive to the form than the men, and men who are attentive to their form, actually that's their attention to the feminine side in a way.
mhm. Yeah,
But what's really interesting, I think, is that a lot of women think that a lot of these things like, you know, bright, sexy clothes and bright makeup and things like that, that they think that they're expressions of femininity when they're actually not. It's actually it's the opposite. It's actually masculine because if you look in nature, so if you so up in this notion of all this really bright clothing and standing out is new. It was only really the wealthy or the rich that would dress brightly. Really, it wasn't until Bernays in the early 20th century brought the idea of attire and appearance being a sort of expression of individuality that we saw people moving beyond just having a Sunday best and a sort of everyday wear. Um, and if you look in nature, in most kingdoms, it is the male that is brightly dressed and easy to see, from the lion's big mane to the brighter birds in the bush. And there's a reason for that. And they stand out to draw the threat. So they're there to be seen, to draw threat. And you'll usually find that in nature, the females are dressed almost with better camouflage to be less visible. And it's because they would normally be with the young, and therefore nature doesn't want them bright and standing out and drawing the predators. It wants the male to draw the predator and draw the threat. And so the male is standing out like that to draw the threat. And really, this whole bright appearancing of women in the last century is actually part of the masculinization that's been taking place for the last 2 centuries. So there's been a masculinization of women and a feminization of men taking place. And it's to bring greater balance to both, as in to almost make us a little bit more androgynous, not physically, but energetically, because we are all whole beings in the end. We have a masculine and a feminine within, and they were very out of balance. And what we've been living in the last couple of 100 years is a massive transition in that, and we're not out of it. We're still in this gender transition. We haven't got the new male and the new female yet. We're all over the place in that respect. But so when women are walking in the street and feeling like they're drawing the male gaze if they're brightly dressed, they don't realize that he's not choosing to look. This is actually the mammal brain. And the mammal brain is acting first on, is it threat? And it's actually, this is the first response. And then he realizes it's not threat, realizes what it is. And it's not. Oh, look at that. And then then it might be male gaze after that point. But the initial reaction, the initial response isn't it at all. The male gaze, as we talk about it, is secondary, the primary thing. And so for women who feel like they stand out when they're dressed like that, that's because it's new. It's new to the feminine to be so on show like that in a way, you know? So,
That could be a bit threatening for a man, couldn't it? Because like they'd think, oh, is she a bit beyond me? Or
and that's exactly what happens.
hmm,
That's exactly what happens is a man will look and decide that she's out of his league.
mm-hmm.
Exactly that. And in a way, it's not that he's outclassed on the masculine feminine matrix, he's outclassed on the masculine masculine matrix.
Oh my gosh, it's such a big subject. I
We're not
went,
going down gender. I mean, we could be on gender for weeks, to be honest. There's a
well,
lot in.
yeah, because you're doing a book on that as well, aren't you? On gender.
I know I am doing one on gender as well, but I've been doing that. That's one. They're both huge subjects. Spelling and gender are both huge subjects of mine. Love them both and hate them at the same time.
Have you heard of Nick Clements?
Nick Clements, he does rites of passage, doesn't he? The
Does.
men.
Yes. And
Yes,
he's,
yes, yes.
yeah, unfortunately, he's got Parkinson's now, so he's not doing the
Oh, I didn't
workshops.
know that. Right, I
Yeah.
didn't realize.
But he did a workshop for me, oh, probably 6 or 7 years ago. And and he asked all the women that were there to talk about the first experience of sex that they had, and asked all the men to talk about the experience. And there was one particular lady in our group. There's probably 7 women and quite a few more men, because it's great when you get that. You do get more men. Usually it's all of women things that I do. Um, but yeah, that was amazing. So there was 7 women, and there was one particular lady on there that was so offended by him asking us to talk about that. Because I think if anyone else had, I probably would have. But
Mhm.
because she was so annoyed, I'm not and but all the men were down the other end laughing. But it's not something you can ever talk about, really, is it? It's not something, but it's something that perhaps needs healing within a lot of people.
Absolutely does. There's huge amounts of wounds there. And it goes back to what we were saying earlier about the first moves of our gender, the first moves of sensuality and sexuality, and how they were received, and how others spoke of them after that, how we thought of it. And with those first waves of such strong feeling, we can form very strong conclusions, very strong interpretations that we rigidly live by, not realizing that we can really, you know, create obstacles to our own ease of being and close ourselves off to our own full range of ability to connect in any given moment with a person. I think one of the, there's the taboo side of it, which is a sense of, shame and unspokenness, which I think is older now. People are coming out of that now, but maybe a little bit hedonistically rather than with real feeling. But at least it's coming to the surface in a way. But I think one of the issues here as well is, with her, not wanting to talk about it, is that I have this notion that people are like berry bushes. Did we talk about that last time?
No.
But no. So yeah, if you ever go and picking blackberries or something like that, and so you go and picking blackberries, and it always seems like the best berries are way just out of reach almost, aren't they? And so you reach in to get that berry, and you find thorns,
Mm.
and people are like that.
Yes.
People are like that. We are like that. We are like berry bushes. We have berries that we sometimes show to the world and that we maybe sometimes want people to reach for. But we also have thorns that we grew in our unconscious. It's like the thorns are like the hardy stem that we grew in the world before we were able to bloom these berries. But that's deep in our unconscious in a lot of us. And it's only in human relations and intimacy that gets poked and tested, and that's where other people find our thorns and we discover them. And then we can end up forming huge judgments around those, extra fixed conclusions about ourselves and others, and stop showing our berries off and stop reaching for others, sort of thing. But there's so much in there around uh, how we self-create this separation of being willing to share truths about ourselves.
Hmm.
Oh,
One of the
and a
things
lot of
he
it
did,
trust.
oh, one of the things he did on there was ask us to wash another person's hands, and then that person had to wash our hands. And it was such an incredibly,
That's lovely.
it
That's
was
lovely.
so
Yeah.
lovely. The initial thought of it was, oh gosh, you do react, like went
Yeah.
into myself a bit, but then when you actually do it, it was very, very lovely.
Yes. Now that's a great example of where we've got a tension response in ourselves. We have a resistance.
Mm,
And when somebody's inviting us into a new terrain, in this case it was physical, but it could
mm,
be an idea.
mm,
And it's no different. You're being invited into new terrain, aversion, resistance. It's palpable. It's a palpable sensation. And it's only if there's trust that we can then go and allow ourselves to have new sensation. And that's a physical one you experience. And what intimacy,
mm.
what sensuality is involved in washing another's hands and having them washed. The most sensitive parts of our body really are some of the most sensitive parts anyway. And how often does that happen? That's a beautiful tale of
Yeah,
invitation past sort of resistance.
yes. Yeah, it was really lovely. Right, we are getting through this.
No, oh my goodness, honestly. So I just want to say one more thing on that as well,
Yes,
just around resistance people have to contact, because we spoke a little bit about contact starvation last time. And this
yes.
is this is such a huge issue just around that kind of the belief that we're taught from a very young age that if I put my hand on you, that it's either sex or violence.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 2 year olds get told, stop hitting her, stop hitting her. It's like, this is my hand. I've only just discovered it. This is all I can do with it. Yay. And we get told that's violence. And and then as we get older, that contact it gets sexualized. And there's a tragedy in here around how much of our mammal sensuality and the intimacy and ease that can bring that we're denied by sexualizing contact in that way. And you got a very small taste of that with this exercise with Nick. But there's so many levels of sensual intimacy that are available to us as mammals and as humans that would deny we are denied, and we deny ourselves because of cultural views around contact and connection in that way. I've got good hopes for the future, though.
Oh, yes. I mean, just
Yeah. The now
see,
is messy.
knowing
The
what
now is
that was like.
messy.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's lovely, honestly. There is hopes. Good
There is,
hope.
there's so much hope.
Yes.
So much hope. Yes.
So we've got alphabet and languages. How is it that we get over 40 complete languages from the same 26 characters? And while differ, we are different in language, we are the same in character.
Did we talk about
Pain,
that at all last time?
Wow, perhaps we did we?
We talk about the Av realization. I think we did.
Oh, yes, I probably did.
Yes, but it is worth. Let's talk about the alphabet for a moment though, because it is really relevant. Because all the level of mind we've been talking about just now is kind of the relationship between signposts, the words and the spells, and
Mhm.
then interpretation and feeling in one way or another. But the level beneath that is even more powerful. It's the level of character, and that's where we get, the Av realization, the Av pain, the of, a tasty meal and stuff. Um, did we talk about the origins of the alphabet last time? I don't know if we did.
I didn't know. I can't think.
Did we talk about the native sounds that are in them?
No.
Am I just okay? So we spoke about the Av realization, how that can convey lots of meaning. And if people and one of the key points on that is that even though our mind might be quite disembodied and disconnected because of the way that we've been shown how to use it, and to be effective at spelling, you need to be able to put feeling into it. There needs for people to feel you, for them to really get your point, for them to know that you're passionate. There needs to be some feeling there. It can't be just a dry monologue where you just talk about the thing totally disconnected. Nobody's interested, you know. But if you can imbue feeling into it, but for many of us, the speed of speech and the way we've been taught to use it, we find it difficult to match embodied feeling with our speech. But the character level in us, the alphabet level, is always embodied, always. And so just bringing character into your speech will at least begin the embodiment process and the attachment between spelling and body. And then once that bridge is set up by you bringing character, which is literally awareness of the characters in your speech to lend weight to them, like in the Av realization, weight, emphasis, intonation, inflection. These
Yeah.
are all these are all part of the art of spelling.
Hmm.
And by adding that character, your character into them, you'd be 100 times more effective and get greater relief from your own expression.
Hmm.
Um, but did we talk about the broken vowel last time?
I can't think that we did.
Oh, let's do it. There's breaks. There's things broken in the alphabet. They're broken, and because they're broken, the whole mental framework doesn't work properly, and that's why it's not plugged in. We're not going to decode the whole alphabet, that's for sure. But we can say so. We learn two ways of saying the alphabet: uppercase and lowercase. Abacadabra, A B C D E.
Mm. Mm.
But we're only allowed to use one in writing, which is very strange. And that actually accounts for, I'm not going to go into it, I promise, but that does the answer to why English is not spoken as it is written lies in the rule of capitals. And it lies in the fact that we live in a capitalist culture where you're not allowed to use capital letters. So the mystery as to why English doesn't match with the writing is to do with the capital rule. But I'm going to leave that as a mystery for your listeners. If anybody's interested, decoding the alphabet will be on my school platform well, I've got a couple of other courses lined up first, but before the end of the year, decoding the alphabet will be on there where we'll get into the answer to that. And that takes us into all sorts of things like language evolution and stuff. But let's get to so there's some broken things in the alphabet, not just the rule of capitals, but other things in the lowercase. And one of them is to do with the shape and position of certain letters, but I'm not going to go into that now. I'm just letting people know it's there. And that's like at the machine code level of mind, that deep mental programming. That's where a shape that's just a shape can suddenly have meaning. If I drew a circle right now on the screen and asked you what it was, you could say, well, it's a circle, it's a hole, it's a sun, it's a hat, it's a ball. It could be any number of things until I give it a relationship. And then if I drew a one and a two next to it, you would know it was a zero. If I drew an N and an E next to it, you would know it was an O, and that's the word one. If I drew a square and a triangle next to it, you would say, oh, it's a circle. So it's only in relationship that we give a shape meaning, but they're all shapes.
Mm.
It's amazing, but that's machine code level of mind. And there's a real problem in the vowels. And I only discovered this after working with sound, the sound of the vowels for like 15 years. And then suddenly hit me that on this journey of sounding I was taking people through, there was a bum note. It wasn't, there was something that wasn't right. It didn't fit. And then it came to me and it is, so we've got, there's a, there's a, there's e, there's e, it and I, o and o. And then we've got you at the end.
Mm.
And that you is not correct.
Oh,
You is a usurper. You is a word masquerading as a character. So you, Y-O-U, is a word. Yeah,
yes,
there's no doubt about it.
yes.
But that's not how that letter is supposed to be pronounced. And actually, so if we look at how the vowels work, O of realization, the I of speaking to self, all the rest of it. Eh, 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 what are you on about? Where in our embodied speech do we go, you, you? Nowhere, nowhere, absolutely nowhere. And actually, this is a crime, this one, because you is an accusation.
Oh,
It's othering. That's enormous. That it is the mechanism of othering, and it's always an accusation. And really, what that sound is meant to be in the spirit of our other vowels is that it has two sounds, just like the other vowels do. One of them is
yeah.
underground, umbrella, bum, and the other one is ooh, which is what it is across Europe. And if we ask ourselves, where do humans use the sound ooh, and where do they use the sound oh? Where do we use it? Oh, oh, ooh, ooh, ooh.
Oh my good.
Where do we use it? We
Yeah.
use it in effort. Ah, I've got four children. The sound was made on the delivery of every single one of them. Is the sound of effort. And ooh is the sound of pleasure and love and connection. And our sound, our vowel, our character for love and connection and pleasure and effort has been usurped by an accusation and an othering. And that is a I mean, that's a deep spelling crime where spelling shenanigans has hacked into the machine code itself of the alphabet and tweaked a little button that's caused so much suffering, with the use of you. And if
Wow.
we ask ourselves, what are all the big changes in the world? Who are they being made for? All the big changes are allegedly being made for you, whoever you is.
Mm. How interesting.
Didn't know
And
we'd do that today,
also,
but there you go.
does the word understand come into that as well? You stand under?
Yeah, I mean, understanding is what lies at the end of meaning, what it is, what it is to mean something. Most people talk about meaning, but they don't really know what it means. They'll use meaning, but it's like, oh, can you tell me what meaning is? And, oh, it's understanding, but actually, meaning is a sense of something because we can all have a different meaning for something, for the same thing. You can think a particular piece of information means this, whereas I can think it means that, you know? So meaning is where it's all at now. I lost my thread. What was it you asked me
And
about there
also,
again?
yeah, I was talking about
Understanding.
understand, but
So
in
understanding is when you have got a point, when you have really got it, when you're not just resting in sort of near the point, when you've really got it. And the thing is, when somebody understands something, they can point it out to anyone, regardless of their perspective, because they understand, as in The point's right there, and I'm under it. I've got it. I know this point. Doesn't matter where your starting position is, I can point this out to you because I understand. And when we only have limited understanding of something, then we have a limited ability to point it out. So we can then maybe easily point it out to people who are like-minded to us, but we encounter great resistance and struggle when we're trying to point it out to people who are very different from us. And it's to do with our level of understanding of what something means. We're not
And
getting
if,
into meaning tonight. Meaning is in the
no,
course.
and if a policeman says, "Do you understand?" You never
Yeah.
understand, do you? You
Never
never say
understand.
you
Never
understand.
understand that guy. No, not them. No, don't understand those guys.
No, no.
No.
So, yes, I hear you, or something like that, but never say, "Yes,
Yes.
I understand."
Yes, absolutely. Because you're completely accepting the terms then. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
And
I
even
fully
there's
receive
some,
your point. I'm fully with your point, sir. Fully with it. I understand. I'm fully there.
so no, you don't say
I
understand.
don't want to do that
And
though.
also on the phone, there's certain things on the phone that you can say, you mustn't say I understand, because that there was something the other day. I posted it anyway, I'll find that. But yeah, you just keep saying I hear you or something.
Yeah. I
Anyway,
mean, you can do these things, but I will say that in terms of every sort of exchange of, so let's talk about with authority and the law and all the rest of it. I've seen people be effective with these methods and with calculated speech and playing all sorts of shenanigans with authority. And it's good, and there's benefit there. The people are getting the rewards of their own authority and freedom and empowerment in it. But I've also seen people be massively effective by being able to connect with the other human being. And you get seconds in your first encounter with anyone where you have an opportunity to get through to the human, every time. And I've seen amazing exchanges where people didn't need any fancy speech, they didn't need any fancy code. They were able to connect with a human being and communicate, and the thing be resolved in one way or another. Now, I'm not saying don't use methods, but I am saying don't rely too heavily on them either, because your humanity is your greatest tool.
when you were saying about meaning, the word mean itself has a meaning, doesn't it? Like
It does.
mean, you're
Like,
being
yeah,
mean.
you mean like a hard person. But
Yeah.
it's interesting that one because when it comes to spelling, the real meaning of meaning is from maths. And because the mind is all about geometry, shape, and structure and all this sort of stuff. And actually, when we're talking about what a spell means, it's about the average of the signposts, and it's about whether that person has pointed something out clearly so you can see what they mean. You can see the average of what they're getting at, you know. And I
And
think,
yet it was given the meaning of me being mean as well.
yeah, exactly. Well, there's a relationship there as well because when we talk about mean, we're talking about hardness in people,
Mm.
and kind of a disconnectedness. A mean person. What are they? What do we mean by mean? When we say that somebody's mean, what does it mean? Does it mean that they're cross? Does it mean that they're unavailable? Does it mean, because there's all different flavors of mean. You can have really passive aggressive mean that doesn't actually say or do much, but sends out infinite vibes, or that people can pick up on that they're a mean person. And I think this is to do with so whenever we're given a new idea, we either soften to it or harden to it. Gender again. We soften or harden. We open to it or we close to it.
Mhm.
And once we've done that, I think when we're using the term mean, it's like saying this person has predominantly hardened, in terms of their predominant response to points of connection and outreach has just been to harden and shut down. Because that is the thing that happens. Every new idea, everything, we either get resistance, aversion, and then hardening that will follow that, or we have a softening and an opening where we can get into new terrain, and it's one or the other.
I love speaking to you, Darren. We've gone way over actually on the hour because it can be too much to listen to all this for so
This
long.
is the thing. And I realized as well, because I've been immersed in writing the course recently, I realized for the second call for some people, this maybe went a little bit deep for some, but I hope it was of use to some people and some value, giving you a sense of that level in yourself. Because your
Oh,
mind is there
honestly,
doing this stuff. The mind is doing this stuff anyway. It's just about trying to become aware of what it is doing.
absolutely. And so I think we'll talk again because I said to you
I
just
can come
before we
back and happily.
started
Yeah.
about logos.
Yes.
And I also said about symbols. I'll just show this one as well. I mean, this might not be a good example. You might find a better one. In fact,
Go
it's gone. I can't see it now. I had a symbol one that I could have opened, but I can't see it. So, um, yeah, about symbols. And you said, oh, that's so interesting. I'll talk about that. So we'll do that next time if that's all right with you.
Happy to do that if you want. If you'll have me back, it'll be a pleasure.
Wonderful. Thank
Yeah.
you. And have you said everything you wanted to say about the your course that's coming
Oh
up?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So I think you're going to put the link up, but it's on school.com, skool.com. There's if you look for the Mind Hacking Mastery School, that's my one, and on it just now there's hacking language, which is we've done bits of that over the last couple of weeks, the last two times we've been together, but also on there will be there'll be hacking anger, there'll be behavior, hacking gender, decoding the alphabet, hacking the alphabet, language evolution, loads more going on there. It's free to sign up and join the community. There's some free content in there just now, and also a paid course on hacking language, which we've spoken about here. So anyone who's interested can go much deeper into some of this stuff and at least have a record of it in front of you. And otherwise, if anyone's interested in getting in touch with me directly or wants me to cover some of my other subjects and something of their own, then you can get me on darrendeojee.com.
Thank you so much, Darren.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again. And again, I just feel like I just need to say I acknowledge there were some parts in this hour that I went quite deep. And if that was a bit much for people, I apologize. It wasn't intentional. It's because I was writing stuff for this course just this afternoon. But I'm sure there'll be some people that would have got some use out of it. That's my
Oh,
hope and
I
prayer.
tell you, I could just sit and listen to you. But anyway, thank you again. Thank you,
You're
anyone that's
welcome.
watching.
Yes, indeed. Thanks for your attention, everyone. I know how precious it is and how hotly competitive it is. And I look forward to seeing you again then, Jackie.
Wonderful. Thanks, Darren.